Our good friend Jake Crain joins the show. Jake, what's going on, my man? How are you?
Man, doing great. Just getting ready for a little bit of Christmas action. I'm almost done shopping, so I almost feel good about it.
Yeah, I was going to ask Jake, what are your Christmas plans? Do you have any big asks on the Christmas list? Anything you're looking forward to getting from Santa Claus this year?
Well, look, I think I've been pretty good. Number one, I've tried to be as good as humanly possible. Right now, my wife is actually redoing my man cave / studio. I haven't been able to go in there for like the last week and a half, so I'm excited to see that reveal. And I already got her a puppy earlier, so that counts as a gift. But man, I mean, I'm easy. I'm not going into it. Maybe a new grill or something like that, but we'll see.
I love that, man. We actually got a new grill. We moved in the house back over the summer. That was a moving in gift, if you will. So I think I used up my.
Dude, talk about signing day.
Yeah.
Talk about signing day. I've been taking official visits up to Lowe's and stuff, and just looking around. So we'll see where I commit.
Well, Jake, you mentioned signing day. Let's go ahead and get into that. I saw you talk this morning about Alabama, Georgia. It is kind of interesting how, signing day for those top 5 or top 10 teams, it's a different experience for everyone else, right? Signing day. Like you ask somebody if they get into recruiting, if they're a diehard recruiting person, and if you are a fan of a school that is signing 5-star after 5-star after 5-star, it's really easy, right, to get invested in recruiting. But either way, National Signing Day yesterday, I think you and I would probably agree, the transfer portal and NIL and such, it's a different dynamic now. It's a much different vibe than it was, say, 10 or 15 years ago, but still National Signing Day is like an early Christmas for college football fans at this point. What were your biggest takeaways as a whole? I know Auburn had a really good day flipping some guys. This is probably one of the best wide receiver classes they've brought in quite some time. I think what's really interesting, Jake, is you look at the national recruiting rankings, and it's almost like if you're in the SEC, you should completely ignore the national rankings because that is nothing but an ego boost because you can be 15th nationally and you can brag about that, but you can be 12th in the SEC. So it's like, what real traction what real ground did you make up, if you will? So biggest winners, biggest losers, overall, your biggest takeaways from National Signing Day yesterday.
Well, I think one of the biggest takeaways, not even from signing day, but from recruiting in 2023 is, I mean, you look at how many guys were uncommitted. There's really not a lot. And the reason for that is because, you have the transfer portal, obviously, but you're able to play 12 years in college football now. So there's not as many spots for these high school guys and JUCO guys and prep school guys. We were talking about it with Tom Luganville earlier in the week. I mean, you had what? It was like less than 20 uncommitted guys in the top 100 going into signing day. I mean, you never used to see that. But as far as winners, it's like I said this morning on the show. I mean, I guess if you're like an Alabama fan or a Georgia fan or an Ohio State fan, it's like a rich kid waking up on Christmas. Like, you're getting great stuff, and there's going to be some awesome surprises too. Like, you're never not going to get what you want or not have enough presents. But outside of your typical, top dogs, I would say a winner, you have to throw Miami in there with what they were able to do. I mean, if you'd have told me that Florida State would have gone undefeated and Miami would have had more momentum than they would going into National Signing Day, I would have thought you were crazy before the college football playoff reveal. So you got to throw Miami in there. Oregon had a big day, and I don't think they're done. Obviously, Auburn, you finished with the 7th-ranked overall class and the number 1 wide receiver class. And they filled some positions of need. And they got some guys coming back too. That was announced that was pretty big. But losers, I mean, I don't know how you look at Florida State and Miami and feel better about, or Florida State, I'm sorry, and Florida and look better about it. I mean, Florida I think they had the 3rd-ranked overall class going into it, dropped down to 16. Florida State ended up not signing a 5-star in the whole class. But I mean, look, Texas Tech, I thought was a winner. They're sneaking their way up the rankings consistently. UCF, I thought had a really good day. But yeah, man, it's so different now. And to be honest with you, you don't get a true sense of how good the class is unless you combine the transfer portal ranking with the recruiting ranking out of high school, because we know the effect that the transfer portal has on rosters now. And we can't make that ranking until the transfer portal window closes.
Jake, to your point, you do have to factor in transfer portal rankings, and let's talk transfer portal and what specifically Ole Miss has done over the last couple of weeks. Your thoughts and impressions on what Lane Kiffin's doing in Oxford, I think, continues to prove that he's somewhat the king of the transfer portal. Of course, added Juice Wells from South Carolina, Tyler Barron from Tennessee, Walter Nolan potentially is going to commit. I mean, it's just one guy after another after another. Your thoughts on the work that Kiffin's doing via the portal?
Well, look, I mean, if we're talking about just high-profile guys that are getting brought in, yeah, I mean, Lane Kiffin's killing it. You know, he's one of the few coaches that is running this experiment out to see if you can just flip the roster pretty much every year. But I will say, with the amount that Ole Miss has coming back that we've already seen on both sides of the ball, I can understand why he's being heavier on the transfer portal this year, because they can make a serious run at it next year. I truly believe that. But some of these coaches that are kind of taking the college basketball route and saying we'll just rebuild the roster every year, I personally don't think you can maintain a high level of success that way. But it's impossible to know because we've never seen it happen over a certain amount of time. So, yeah, I mean, if we're going to go off high-profile names, proven commodities, I mean, what Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss is doing going into a year next year where their schedule is one of the lighter ones in the SEC, I mean, I think you could get some pretty good returns in a 12-team playoff.
Jake, I want to get your live reaction to this in case you missed it. KJ Bolden has flipped back from Georgia to Florida State. Your live reaction thoughts to that?
What?
Yes. This coming
like
from
he just flipped back?
Oh, actually, you know what? I got, Jake. I got to admit.
Okay.
Somebody,
I thought he signed.
Somebody in the Discord shared a fake link, fake Hayes Fawcett X account. That's why you got to be careful out here, man. That's why you got to be careful.
Okay, God, he pulled a Rashard Mendenhall and fumbled at the worst time.
Yes, I got. Let's keep it moving with Auburn, man. Again, you're an Auburn man. We already talked about the wide receiver class. What do you think they're going to do in regards to quarterback? I know the name KJ Jefferson has floated around. I don't know if that's realistic or not, or if Hugh Freeze would even want him, but your thoughts on what Hugh is building. I mean, obviously, I think for them to finish what you said, 7th nationally, 4th in the SEC, that's a hell of a signing class for his first full class there on the Plains.
No, without a doubt, they had to have it. And look, when you can offer NIL and playing time at a place like Auburn, you're going to get some good returns. But I thought the staff did a really good job of filling needs. Now, when it comes to quarterback, I mean, I'll be honest, it's looking like Peyton Thorne. Now, you know, anything could happen. We know with the transfer portal and the craziness that's brought. But the thing with Peyton Thorne, and I'll continue to say this, I don't think Peyton Thorne can be the focal point of your offense or the guy you're counting on the most or your best playmaker and you go win the SEC. But I do think if you put the right pieces around him with his running ability, and you have guys like Cam Coleman, who I think is going to come in and play. You have guys like Perry Thompson, who I think is going to come in and play. You return basically your whole offensive line. You're really good in the running back room. And Rivaldo Fairweather, to me, is going to be probably a top 5 tight end prospect going into the NFL draft next year. You can put Peyton Thorne in a position to be able to be effective enough offensively with those weapons around them to win the SEC. It's like we used to say, don't be the reason, but be the difference. So it's looking like Peyton Thorne with Robbie Ashford hitting the transfer portal. I think the perfect scenario for Hugh Freeze and Auburn with what's going on is you signed Walker White, big-time quarterback coming out of high school, more in the mold of what Hugh Freeze and them want. He comes in this first year. He's your backup. You're able to get him some reps while redshirting him. Peyton Thorne takes that next step, and then you pass it down to Walker White going into the next year. So that's what it kind of feels like to me.
Jake, you've mentioned many times the parity in college football this year and that you hope it continues, obviously, going into 2024 and beyond. You look at recruiting, you look at the portal, I feel like there's no reason that it shouldn't, right? I look at a team, again, like an Ole Miss. I look at Missouri, what Eli Drinkwitz is doing. I mean, I think they're continuing to build positive momentum, and they're going to be bringing key guys back, led by Brady Cook and Luther Burden next year. Do you feel confident that the parity will continue, or do you fear that we'll revert back to just 3 or 4 dominant teams? I mean, I feel like we're set up pretty well to to keep this thing going in regards to the competitiveness and the parity going into the first year, the 12-team playoff?
Well, I mean, despite being an Auburn fan, I'm an optimist. So I'm hoping this is the new normal. I hope this isn't just a combination of, a lot of teams having to replace quarterbacks at pretty big time places, along with obviously the transfer portal and things like that. I think expanding to the 12-team playoff is going to help parity over time. But what we've seen with the transfer portal is kind of a lifting of everybody's floor, right? I mean, the rich are always going to get richer. That's the way it works. But it feels like everybody's floor kind of got lifted by being able to bring in experienced guys at important positions to come in and try and roll over a roster. So, and again, I mean, you got guys that can play for 12 years now in college football. So you have more experienced guys to pass around at the quarterback position too. But I do think this is going to be the new normal. I hope it's the new normal. But would I be shocked if for the next 2 or 3 years there was only truly 2 or 3 teams that could win it? No, because I look at the recruiting rankings.
Jake, now you've coached obviously at the collegiate level. You know what these coaches go through, and you know it's a results-oriented business, right? And it can be cutthroat at times. There are South Carolina fans right now, and I'm sure there's fans of other schools who had less than stellar seasons, but there are Gamecock fans specifically that are frustrated that there have been no coaching changes, whether it be a defensive coordinator, running backs coach, what have you. And, of course, National Signing Day just took place yesterday. And, again, the rumor mill continues to be hot about what changes Shane Beamer may make, what changes fans think he needs to make. Can you speak to just what it's like to be on a staff and like, people are the contracts, everybody's talking about the contracts in January 1st, and maybe after the turn of the new year, there will be changes. There will be things that happen or what have you. And certainly we know we're going into a pivotal year 4 with Shane Beamer and what he needs to do in Columbia. But I mean, can you just speak to what that's like, I guess, going through the ringer? And I'm sure you've seen it before firsthand of coaches and coordinators and people being on the chopping block. And I mean, it's a cutthroat business no matter how you slice it.
No, without a doubt. And obviously, we just had signing day as well. It's a lot easier to sign players when you have continuity on your coaching staff as opposed to having to bring a brand new guy in. And listen, it's not I'm not saying Shane Beamer is doing this, but I think that goes into the calculus along with when the contract ends as well. That's something you got to think of now with the new signing day being in December. But here's the way it works. It's something that, you hate to see it being on a coaching staff because that means it didn't go well. And when it doesn't go well for one guy, it doesn't really go well for everybody else. And you're all in it together. You put in these crazy hours, the amount of time away from your family. But as a coach, you realize that this is how business works. The head coach obviously wants to keep his job. The coordinators want to keep their job. So if somebody has to go, it typically goes assistant coaches, then coordinator, then head coach. So they're not going to fire themselves. It's kind of an understanding, especially if, your group didn't perform up to task. I would say if there are no changes made, even after the first of the year, it tells me 2 things. It says, 1, Shane is obviously confident in the staff that he has. And 2, he knows he has to win regardless, I guess, because if you're not going to make any changes, then regardless of what you say at press conferences, it kind of does seem acceptable with how things went. I mean, I saw him say the other day, for 16 straight years, you've been getting ready for a bowl game this time of year, and this year you're not, and that's not acceptable. Well, if you don't make any changes, then on one hand, you're kind of saying it's acceptable.
Jake, that is a drop the mic moment, I think, for sure. And we'll see what Shane Beamer does, no doubt. But either way, it's results on the field are what are going to determine his future, and whether he makes changes or not, I know that is the case. Jake, last week, the 2024 SEC schedules were released game by game, if you will. Your initial reactions to that, I think there's obviously some you look and there's some gauntlets out there, man. I mean, I don't think anybody's going to be talking about Georgia's schedule going into next year. South Carolina's got to go to Alabama, to Oklahoma, back-to-back weeks. What jumped out to you? Was there anything specifically that you took away from that initial schedule release?
Well, I mean, all you did was add just another damn to the schedule. Typically you read SEC schedules, you're like, man, it's tough. But you just added another one. I mean, with Texas and Oklahoma. The Florida schedule, I mean, goodness gracious, man. I mean, that you definitely pulled the Ben Affleck short end of the stick at the end of Armageddon on that one, and I don't think Bruce Willis is going to push you back in that little elevator, especially not with what just happened on signing day with Billy. But man, it's all tough, right? I would say Ole Miss's is probably lighter, as I'm at Missouri's. I think is a little bit lighter, but I mean, it is just an absolute. I am, especially after what happened to Florida State. Like, I am not scheduling anybody good in the non-conference ever again if I'm in the SEC. And we're going to go to a 9-game in-conference schedule at some point. Yeah, but y'all think y'all got pissed off when everybody played like Alabama A&M and like, you know, SC LSU like the week before the last week? I'm going to get 3 weeks of cupcakes. I'm turning my schedule into a bakery in the non-conference.
So, Jake, I want to get into this really quickly. This morning it came out. Florida State is taking action. Their board of trustees, they're to approve a legal filing on Friday, the first step in an exit from the ACC, that coming from Bud Elliott. Your thoughts on the action that Florida State is taking? I think obviously this is sparked from not just because of this, because I think for years they've probably been wanting to get out or eyeing an exit. But obviously with the latest college football playoff stuff, them getting left out, it looks like FSU is looking for an exit. Do you think they could potentially be a team that Greg Sank and the SEC look at adding in the future?
Yeah, I mean, look, if they get out of it, just the Big Ten just doesn't make a lot of sense to me, right? I think the SEC would want to take in Florida State, but I think you got to be able to take in another one with them. You know, I don't think this is a take one team, and now we're at 17 teams. I mean, I like that nice even number. Maybe that's the OCD in me. But listen, if I'm Florida State, yeah, we went undefeated and they kept us out. Why are we still in this group of 5 conference? Like, I was already pissed earlier. We already wanted to leave. This party sucked. And now, you know, y'all didn't even bring any alcohol. So we're out of here. I wouldn't blame them. I'd have been trying to get out the minute I saw that Alabama A on the 4th spot in the playoff reveal. But yeah, I don't blame it at all. If I'm Clemson, I'm trying to get out. If I'm Miami, we're getting out. This was like the final nail, right? The final nail, I think, in some of these top teams in the ACC, because you basically got weighed, measured, and you were left wanting.
Jake, speaking of that Alabama A, we're just over, I should say, a week away from kickoff. Alabama and Michigan, Texas and Washington. Have you locked in your college football playoff picks yet? And if so, who do you got? And who's your national champion at this point? Or at least which way are you leaning?
Well, I picked Michigan at the beginning of the year, so I'm gonna stick with that. I'm gonna dance with the one that brought me. But the more I look at this Bama-Michigan game, the worse I feel about it for Michigan. I haven't made my pick yet. I just stylistically, I don't think it's a good matchup for them with what Alabama does. Alabama's very Jackson Pollock with great athletes, and Michigan is very like Andy Warhol. It's just Georgia was very Andy Warhol, and it just didn't work out. I mean, Alabama hit him on those improv plays a bunch. I look at Texas and Washington. I mean, really, who gets the ball last, man? That's what it feels like to me. I think Texas is a little bit better than Washington is up front on both sides of the ball, but I mean, Washington is still elite at the quarterback and skill position, and they show up in big games, man. I've bet against them twice against Oregon. They proved me wrong twice. But Texas and Quinn Ewers, I mean, you look at what they have on the outside. It's no joke with what they got. So I haven't locked in my picks officially. I'm leaning Bama, Texas in the Natty. I'm leaning that way, but I'm not all the way in, Chris. I'm gonna have to just sit down and stare outside and think about it a little bit more.
Those who have SEC fatigue would not be getting any relief if it were Alabama and Texas. That is for sure.
Yeah. Because since we claim them now, you're ours now. Yeah. It's past January 1st, so you're ours now.
Yeah, I mean,
you're all SEC final.
Yeah, and you're already listed in the recruiting rankings and stuff. I mean, you know, Texas is basically already in. So
we'll take it.
So yeah, for sure. Yep. Jake, we didn't get your thoughts on this last week. The Gamecocks did make a splash in the transfer portal when they added Rocket Sanders from Arkansas. Your thoughts on this edition? I've been really intrigued by, obviously locally in Gamecock circles, it's been a move that most everyone, I would say, has praised. We all know what Rocket did in 2022 when he was healthy. I've been really intrigued, though, Jake, and maybe it's just the contrarian in me, and I like to run to the banter and some different opinions. But I've been intrigued by those outside of Gamecock circles that have been somewhat critical of the addition, or maybe they're not sold on it because of the offensive line struggle. So where do you fall on the Rocket Sanders ad, and does it make all that much of a difference if Carolina can't block any better than they did in 2023?
Yeah, no, it doesn't make a difference. I mean, Rocket Sanders is a good back. He's got to stay healthy. That's probably his biggest bugaboo has been injuries. But as far as being a quality back, he's better than what South Carolina has had, especially last year down the stretch. Now, when I look at the offensive line, yeah, I mean, I'm not going to sit here and think you're going to set the bench press record if you don't have any arms. I mean, you know, you got to be able to sit down and grab the bar at least. And if you don't have anybody that can block for you, or you're as bad as what South Carolina was last year, it doesn't matter. That's why football is the greatest sport that God ever put on this planet. It's the ultimate team sport. If one part of the organism doesn't work, the other one isn't going to work. So without anybody that can block, a running back can't run. Without anybody that can protect, a quarterback can't throw. That's what made what Spencer Rattler did so impressive to me. And I think he even though his year wasn't incredible, it was a little bit underrated with what he had in front of him. So, yeah, I don't need to be sold on Rocket. I need to be sold on the offensive line.
Jake Crain of Crain and Company joined us every single week throughout 2023. Jake, Merry Christmas to you and yours. Happy New Year. Look forward to doing it more in 2024. And the last thing, Jake, I'll leave you with is this. I heard your segment with Mark Ryan this week, and I agree with you. I think a decal is a sticker.
Thank you. It's so simple. If I could just get these clowns that I talk with every morning to understand that, it'd be a whole hell of a lot easier. But no, Merry Christmas to everybody out there. You made it through. Next year, I got to see what they do in the portal, but I think it's going to be better for South Carolina. But no, I appreciate you guys and having me on, and look forward to next year. We got to get you on Crain and Company next year.
Yeah, man, let's do it. Let's do it. Jake, I appreciate you, man.
All right.